Remember the comedian Bill Dana said, Captain Jimenez, what's it like at blast off? Please don't use the word blast off. We use the word lift off. We take a blast before lift off. The other one that I correct you on, Catherine, is when I did get ready to get the Apollo program ready to go to the moon, I normally would say moon and back. We like to confirm our round trips. Other than that, it was a beautiful introduction. Thank you very much. I'm also known as a smart ass for not. The fun of it is that when you look at a vehicle such as this, you get a feeling about the immensity of the space program. And I can recall when I was ordered to Washington, D.C. to be briefed on how neat it would be to go into space. They told me I would get in a capsule on top of a rocket. I didn't think that was very exciting. I thought there were some people in the circus who did that with a cannon they landed a net. They would be the people who should do that. Then they went on to say, don't worry, we'll send some monkeys and chimpanzees. I knew I didn't want to do that. That's what happens when you finally get drawn into something that will take you higher, farther, and faster. And of course, that's what happened with Mercury and then Gemini and Apollo. And yes, I do miss the space program. I miss the excitement here, and you can feel it in this particular building. I'm always flabbergasted when I see the immensity of this vehicle here with 7.5 million pounds of thrust. We went to the moon and back with 6 different American crews landing on the moon, 12 Americans, and we scuttled it, literally. And it's embarrassing to see a country as great as this is do such a great task, and suddenly we're down to launching a shuttle with a bunch of mice and crickets. And not that that's bad, but science has suffered by the fact that we lost this big booster that could do all kinds of things. And most of the people now are retired. I was a little late here because I was visiting Pad 14, where I left Earth rather suddenly back in 1962. They restored Pad 14, the blockhouse. It's gorgeous. I really enjoyed the visit. And it was from there, of course, that I left Florida the first time in a hurry. I always said I spent months in Florida. We always left in a hurry, at least 3 times. But we spent many, many months in those days preparing for a flight here. Training here, training in simulators, visiting contractors who made equipment. So as a result, we got to know Florida quite well. I did see a manatee coming over. I did see a gator, so I'm back home again. I know that. And I'm not sure I want to see some of the snakes that cruise around the area. But other than that, the beach looks good to me. When I left the space program, I did an environmental company for a while. Planet of ours. I'm active today with SeaWorld, SeaWorld, which you know here. And we're helping the manatee here. We're helping the white sea bass on the west coast. We're worried about whether this planet can maintain the life that would keep us alive. We're hoping with some of the space station data that we can look at spaceship Earth, determine what the weather patterns really are, not weather guessing. We'll do a lot better than Willard Scott, I know. But of course, some of those people that are getting that old, that might be worthwhile for to talk about. But if we know what the weather's going to be like, we can then tell people when to plan a crop or when not to plan a crop. And that would help people all over the world. So the space program by no means is over, but it took a real kick in the rear end when we cut off the Apollo 17 mission. I hope a lot of you have seen the HBO series From the Earth to the Moon. I enjoyed it. Mark Armstrong is as good looking as I am, but other than that, I told Mark that right away. We enjoyed the series very much. It'll give you a good follow-on to what you're seeing here today. I think it might be worthwhile, Catherine, to do some questions and answers because you've been briefed pretty well, I'm sure, here. If I don't hear your question, there was a little noise as I flew these things, so my hearing has suffered a little bit, but Catherine can help repeat them, and I'll repeat them for the rest of the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo spacecraft. And I don't think I really would like to fly as a passenger in the back, although I have to do that in commercial aircraft. And that's unfortunate because they won't let me up front all the time. But my heritage is very strong. My dad flew in World War I, was an ace in World War I. Mother was a wing walker. So I really feel that I should follow that heritage and not just get in the back and hang on to a strap, as we call the people who come down here from New York. If you ever rode on a subway, a strap hanger is a very familiar term. We call the people in the back that. Now, it doesn't mean that the people in the back aren't important. Although one of my friends said, if John's talking about being an old senator, why don't they send up Strom Thurmond?
Orbit has to be fueled. That means only 10% can be the engines, the wings, the tanks, the people, and the payload. Only 10%. So if the engine doesn't quite perform, boy, that payload shrinks in a hurry. If the weight gets a little bit heavier, that payload shrinks. It's very sensitive, very high performance, very lightweight. Many of us think two-stage would be much better. And if you have a two-stage that can take economically 100 people up there, look at what you can do with that reusable first stage. Instead of this, you can put 4 of them together. They'll go up, come back, fly back, and be used again. The other part will go on up into orbit like Skylab and be used as a hotel. So now the tourists are going up 100 at a time, and they're going to have a place to go to. Now, that rocket that uses those 4 reusables, that's the rocket that will take us back to the moon and then on to Mars. But what comes first? Tourism in space. That's you guys having an opportunity to go. And that's the political people seeing that you want to do that and directing our program so that we can bring that about. So it's not just going to be a few of us saying what I think we ought to do. It's going to take a lot of people trying to understand what we want to do and relaying that to your congressional people. There was a study done not too long ago. NASA and the Space Transportation Association talked about tourism in space. And that came out just a month or 2 ago. It talked all about the market research and who would want to go and how much would they pay to go.
I wanted to start his introduction by asking you all a question. How many of you have ever finished last and been real happy about it? Anybody? You could say that Eugene Cernan came in last, having the distinction and honor of being the last person to walk on the moon.
Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate all that, and I want to welcome all of you here to Kennedy, and particularly to the Saturn V Center, which I'll say a few words about in a minute, and then hopefully turn it over to you and answer as many questions as I possibly can about some of those things that you may have found interesting or always wondered about. You know, when you get an introduction like that, you got to be careful that you don't go away feeling like a hero, because in reality you read it. I'd like to think I'm the same person I was before I ever went to the moon. A little older and a little grayer, but when you do some of the things we did, I think that's an excuse to get a few gray hairs. But when I went to the moon the first time, my daughter, who is now a young lady with 3 daughters of her own, was only 6 years old. And I took her out in the backyard before we went to the moon on Apollo 10. Remember, there was only one other flight that had ever gone to the moon, and that was Apollo 8 on Christmas Eve. And some of you who are old enough, most of you are not, but you may remember that. And so we were going to take the lunar module, which we called Snoopy. We have spacecraft for Snoopy and Charlie Brown, and we were going to take the lunar module to the moon for the first time. Second ever flight of the lunar module. First time ever to go to the moon. As a matter of fact, at one time there was a consideration that maybe Apollo 10, since we're going to go all that way and take the lunar lander, might just go ahead and travel that last 47,000 feet and land on the moon. But it was decided it'd probably be a little bit more cautious and leave that to Apollo 11 and do everything else for you. In other words, we painted the yellow line in the sky in Apollo 10 for Apollo 11 to follow. Anyway, I took my little girl out in the backyard about a month before we flew, and 6 years old, remember. And I said, you know, Tracy, do you know what that is? And she looks up there, and before she could answer, I said, Tracy, that's the moon. And I said, Tracy, do you know how far away the moon is? And she stopped to think a minute, and before she could answer again, I said, Tracy, the moon is way, way far away in the heavens where God is. And I said, Tracy, do you know who's going to go to the moon? And she said, and I said, your daddy and Mr. Stafford are going to fly Snoopy. We're going to go close to the moon. I kept throwing these questions at her before that poor little 6-year-old could come up with an answer, even if she had it. Her daddy had the answer for her. I guess I was pretty excited. Then I went to the moon in May. As a matter of fact, today is the 25th of May. The 25th of May, 1969, Apollo 10 was on her way home from the moon, and we landed in the Pacific Ocean on the 26th of May, my sister's birthday. 29 years ago. I forgot about that. 29 years ago today, we were on our way home. Anyway, came home from the moon. A month later, took the same little 6-year-old in the backyard. And I said, Tracy, do you know? She says, Daddy, that's the moon. And I said, Tracy, do you know? She says, Daddy, the moon is way, way, way far in the sky where God lives. And I said, Tracy, no. She said, Daddy, you and Mr. Stafford flew Snoopy close to the moon than anyone has ever been before. And boy, before I get out the question, she had the answer. And all of a sudden it got quiet. And I figured, here comes a question that's going to make me show and tell in kindergarten, you know, the next morning. Here on a block. You got to understand, when your daughter goes to school with the likes of Buzz Aldrin's kids and Jim McDivitt's kids and Dave Scott's kids and Neil Armstrong kids, going to the moon for a 6-year-old at that point in time in her life just ain't a big deal. But all of a sudden it got quiet. She looks up at me and she says, Daddy, and I said, what, punk? And she said, now that you've been to the moon and back, when are you going to take me camping like you promised? There, I tell you, when you begin to think you're something you're not, talk to your kids. You go one step beyond looking in the mirror, talk to your kids. Notwithstanding that, I have led a pretty exciting life. A very dear friend of mine one time told me in a conversation, he said, but Gene, you know, other people don't look at yourself the way you look at yourself. I said, you're one of 12 guys who's had a chance to walk on the moon. And I stopped to think about that, and I had to admit he was right, because I do know other people look at me differently than I do, and it's probably good, because we can't go around with a sign around our neck saying, hey world, you know, we went to the moon. Other side of that coin is, having had the kind of experiences that we've had in most cases, as I look around here, before more than half of the young men and women out there, even some of the mothers and fathers were even born, we have a responsibility to share some of the excitement of what we have done and where we have been. And thus some of the reasoning behind this Saturn V Center. This is not just a tribute to the people who went to the moon, who had a unique and special opportunity. It's a tribute to the people who made it possible. When I took those first steps on the surface of the moon on Apollo 17, I said I dedicate these first steps to the people who made these steps possible. And that's what this is about. I don't know whether some of you or all of you have been through the theaters here yet, but I think they tend to tell a story of the real drama, the real involvement, the real commitment, the real dedication of the Saturn Apollo program that took us to the moon. This is overwhelming. You know, when you look, this is 38 stories high, laying on its side. I don't know how long. I saw the battleship Missouri in the news yesterday. I don't know how long exactly it is, but I guarantee this is probably bigger. This is bigger. Stand us up, it's 38 stories high. And when you get out there in that gantry and you walk across that little catwalk that you can see down through, and you're 38 stories high, and you can look from up the coast to somewhere in Georgia or Carolinas to Miami, particularly when it's at nighttime, and I had a chance to do that. If you've got enough courage to walk across that little platform and get in the spacecraft, going to the moon is a piece of cake. I'm going to tell you, the rest is easy. Let me tell you real quick, and I don't want to let you ask some questions. I did fly in Gemini 9. That was way back in 1966. Gemini is sort of, like the forgotten program, but it was the bridge between Al Shepard and John Glenn and Wally Schirra and these guys who started in Mercury when we didn't even know we could survive in space. It was a bridge that took us to Apollo, that took us to this. It was a big step, believe me, from Gemini to Apollo, but Gemini was a bridge. It was where we learned to rendezvous in space. It's where we learned to live long duration space. And on Gemini 9, I ended up to be the second American ever to walk in space. Ed White was the first. He was out for 20 minutes. If you remember some of your history books, you remember that. I was the first guy to be out for some 2.5 hours, walked around the world twice, day and night, and found myself in an environment of zero gravity, Mr. Newton's laws. When you pick up something, it picks you back. When you twist a valve, it twists you back. That we knew absolutely nothing about. And this is not an advertisement, but because I've been working on it for about 2 years, but I'm in the process of writing a book. And when I got to the area that covers this Gemini 9 spacewalk, it covers about a chapter and a half, and after reviewing and thinking and listening to tapes, listening to my own voice, so forth, the man I'm working with to put this book together said, we're going to call that chapter Spacewalk from Hell, because that's what it was. It was one of those big learning environments that we need to be able to get to the moon. Went to the moon on Apollo 10, as I said, Snoopy and Charlie Brown. We did everything on that flight but land. We had a few problems. Lunar module went out of control when we were circling the moon, going down on a low pass, taking pictures and checking out the radar for Apollo 11, but we managed to put that back together, and then I had a chance to back up Alan Shepard on Apollo 14, which followed the Apollo 13 near disaster when we literally came closer than any of us even realized then of leaving or condemning 3 human beings to the endlessness of space. I think most of you have probably seen the movie Apollo 13. I was very closely involved with the real mission as a backup crew on the next flight, and I can tell you that if anything, it underplayed the real drama. Yes, it was authentic. Yes, it was real, but the real happening was even more dramatic. And so Apollo 14 being the next flight, I was a backup commander to Alan Shepard, and then had my chance to go back as commander of Apollo 17. So I've had a chance to ride this monster twice. And I want to tell you, too bad it doesn't exist somewhere in Six Flags over Texas so everyone can have that chance. It is just one horrendous 12 to 14, I don't remember, 15-minute ride into space. I mean, you got the thrust of 600 or 800 jet airplanes coming out of the tail of this thing. I mean, the Gemini Titan intercontinental ballistic missile I rode on to get into orbit in Gemini would just about fit in one of the nozzles of those F1 engines you see back there. That was the big difference, the big step, the gigantic step we took from Gemini to Apollo. The second time I rode this was the first time any manned spaceflight from the beginning ever launched at night. We were right out here. You can see the pads. Pad 39B is right here, and A is there. And I launched off of B on Apollo 10 and A on Apollo 17. And we launched at night on a very unique day on December 7th. December 7th, 1972 at 12:33 a.m. in the morning. We left for the moon on man's final voyage, at least in this century. As you said, it's a dubious honor to have been called the last man to have walked on the moon, because it is indeed an honor. But it's disappointing as well, because when I came back from Apollo 17, I thought, not only thought, I stood on my soapbox and said, you know, Apollo 17 is not the end, it's the beginning of a whole new era in the history of mankind. And by the turn of the century, we'll not only have been back to the moon, and someone will have taken that honor away from me, but we'll be on our way to Mars. And I was only half right. We're going to do both of those things. We're going to do all of those things. We're just not going to do them as quickly as I thought we would. As a matter of fact, I have said it, and I'll say it again, the young men and women who are going to be the crew of that first mission to Mars are in our classrooms today. Some of them could be your children, your grandchildren, your nephews, your nieces, but they're out there in our classrooms today. That's how strongly I feel about that. Let me just say one other thing, and then I'll throw it open to questions. Flying in Earth orbit, as we did early in Mercury and Gemini, of course, those were days we weren't sure what we were doing, but Earth orbit is a lot different than going to the moon. And of course, that's where our shuttle is flying today. The shuttle is an Earth orbit spacecraft, 200, 300, 400 miles away. There's a lot to do in Earth orbit as we move on towards the development of the space station, which will be an Earth orbiting vehicle as well. It's going to be a fascinating experience, and there's a lot of good, a lot of scientific and medical and commercial good that's going to come from that. But I've got to tell you, when you leave this planet and you fly to another planet somewhere out in this universe, even though the moon is not that far away by comparison with where the other stars and suns are. Things suddenly do become different, because when you fly around in Earth orbit, you fly around this Earth once every hour and a half. You fly through a sunrise and a sunset every 90 minutes as you travel at 17,500 miles an hour. A phenomenal experience. You fly over a coastline, you fly over a river, you fly over a city, and if you're lucky, maybe even you fly over your own hometown. You fly above the thunderstorms, you can see the lightning from above. You fly over hurricanes and typhoons, and it's an unbelievable place to be. But when you accelerate the other end of this thing, you know, there's 3 rockets here. The first stage, the second stage, and the third stage. And when you get up to the third stage, it looks pretty small. But when you fire that third stage the second time, and it accelerates you out of Earth orbit, it took our Apollo spacecraft with our lunar lander from some 18,000 miles an hour and accelerated us to 25,000 miles an hour. And I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that is fast, and that's experience. And how do you sense it? Only with your eyes. You can feel a rocket pushing you. When it shuts down, you're going to coast, effectively coast all the way to the moon and let the gravity of the Earth's moon push you and pull you around. But when you turn around and look back at the Earth, you realize that that horizon that you saw on Earth orbit, which was just slightly curved, has now somehow mysteriously closed in around and upon itself, and you are beginning to realize you're seeing something familiar and yet something very, very strange, because now you're no longer flying across and over rivers and deserts and cities and hometowns and across oceans. You're now literally watching them form in front of your very eyes. And in a moment after you pinch yourself, you realize that you are looking at the entirety of the world. Very, very, very large at first, and then it grows small. It grows smaller very quickly as you leave the Earth, and then more slowly as you get to the moon. But you begin to realize you can look without even turning your head or moving your eyes, as I'm doing here. You can literally look from the turquoise blues of the Caribbean near the Bahamas, across the east coast of the United States and North America, across the snow-covered mountains and the deserts and the coastlines of California and Oregon and Canada and Mexico, into the deep dark blues of the Pacific without even turning your head. And you no longer fly through a sunrise and a sunset. You sort of stand back and watch them happen on other sides of the Earth. You can watch the sun set on one side of the Earth, on the east coast of the United States, know it's rising on the other side of the world, all at the same instance, and you lose your identity with time. You don't get up in the morning and eat breakfast when the sun comes up, or go down, or go to sleep when the sun goes down. Time takes on a whole new meaning, and the further out you go, as it takes you 3 days to get to the moon, and then eventually get captured by this other planet, you become literally detached from one planet, your home planet, your identity with reality, and captured by another. That's why I say flying in Earth orbit is one space program. Leaving Earth orbit and going to another planet, in our case the moon, is a totally different space program. Just not technologically because of the requirements to get there, but philosophically as well. I could go on, and well, let me just finish it with this. When you look back at the Earth, you look at it in all its splendor and all its beauty, you watch it rotate on an axis that you, very majestically yet mysteriously, that you cannot see but you know must be there, because the Earth doesn't tumble and move aimlessly through space. When you see that, and you try and comprehend it all, and you watch North America and South America sort of go around a corner, and then you're looking at Australia and Asia and Europe and then all of Africa, and you watch it move with purpose and beauty, you come to a conclusion very quickly that it's too beautiful to have happened by accident. That there must be somebody bigger than us all who put that small part of the universe that you're privileged to see. And when I said earlier, when I got on the stage a minute ago, about one of the responsibilities that I feel we have is just, while we're alive, you know, if Columbus were here, would we have a bunch of questions for him? While we're alive, we have a responsibility to share some of those feelings and thoughts with other people. It's at that moment you begin to be selfish. You feel selfish because you want to tell people. You want to show people. And this Earth of ours, it's beautiful and overpowering and awe-inspiring it is surrounded by this blackness, this infinite blackness with endless depth. Call it what you like. I call it the infinity of time and space, and I'm not sure I know what that means. But I can tell you it exists, and we moved through it because I saw it with my own eyes on more than one occasion, having been to the moon twice. I had a chance to challenge those feelings. So what this building, building is not the right word, but what this edifice, this is a testimonial to what mankind did, what America did with the United States. And it's probably being Memorial Day. It's a great day to be here. It's what this country of ours did. And a country of ours is nothing but people who were challenged to do something by President Kennedy that most thought couldn't be done, that most people thought was impossible. And yet they reached out a little bit further than mankind has ever reached out before, and we did get to the moon. And it wasn't easy. It was like Kennedy said, it was hard, and it cost us. We certainly bask in our triumphs and had ticker tape parades, and I want to tell you, we paid for our mistakes because we lost a lot of people along the way. So this building is a tribute to the country, to the people who made it possible, to a period of time in our history which was very small, less than 10 years, to be honest with you. And it's a tribute to what we can do. And I think this is a message we want to give to our kids. It's a tribute to what we can do if we want to do something badly enough, if we're committed to make something happen, if we believe in it and we believe in ourselves. And that's why I'll tell all those youngsters out there, if I could stand here and talk to you about going to the moon, maybe not youngsters, maybe oldsters as well, you tell me what's impossible in your lifetime. You tell me what you can't do if you commit yourself, if you want to do it badly enough, you commit yourself to making it happen. You tell me, if I can stand here and say, I lived on a moon. I not only lived on a moon for 3 days and drove a car around, I've been there twice. You tell me what you can't do in your lifetime. It ain't going to happen by accident. It's going to take a personal effort and commitment on your part.